So I'm Grégoire Clermont. I'm here with Quentin Bourgue. We both work at Sequoia. So Sequoia is a SOC platform and a threat intel vendor. And as part of our work in the threat detection and research team, we've been working on the adversary-in-the-middle phishing threat for the past 3 years. Building detection rules, tracking infrastructures, identifying new emerging phishing kits, and so on. And that's what we will try to show to you today. We'll first do an overview of the ecosystem of phishing-as-a-service and of adversary-in-the-middle phishing. Then we'll deep more into the methods we use to identify new kits, track the prevalence of kits, investigate the kits we discover, and so on. And finally, Quentin will present a case study on a specific threat actor, the tooling he uses, and that will help put in perspective how phishing kits fit into the broader picture. So let's dive into phishing-as-a-service platforms and adversary-in-the-middle phishing. Why did we get interested into this? It all starts with business email compromise. So if you're not familiar, it's a type of fraud where adversaries try to manipulate an employee of a company, for instance, into transmitting a large sum of money into an account controlled by the attacker, often by impersonating a trusted contact, be it a colleague, a partner. And if, like us, you read the FBI Internet Crime Report every year, you may have noticed that business email compromise is at the second spot of the list and has been for many years. And in the last report for 2025, business email compromise fraud was responsible for more than 3 billion of losses just in the US last year. So we got interested into the TTPs of BEC actors. And as you may guess, to impersonate employees working in finance, for instance, or HR or payroll, a common TTP is to try to take over the email account of the person, which means for most organizations these days, Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace accounts. One of the difficulties that threat actors encounter is that over the past few years, more and more organizations have implemented two-factor authentication for cloud accounts, especially the important ones. And so classical phishing, just email password compromise, doesn't work as well, which has led to the apparition of a new type of phishing kit, or the popularization, that we call adversary-in-the-middle kits, which are technically more sophisticated. The phishing kit acts kind of like a relay between the victim and the authentication service. And the phishing kit is able to in real time, to ask the victim, for instance, for an MFA code, to input it into the real authentication service. And the result of this type of compromise is that the attacker obtains a session cookie for the account of the victim that they can then, for instance, load into a different web browser and access the account of the victim without having to perform an MFA challenge again. Quick aside. The main focus of this talk is adversary-in-the-middle phishing, but we will talk in a few instances of a second technique called device code phishing. It's becoming important in the last few months, so we wanted to include it. It's a Microsoft-specific technique. It works only with Entra ID, which is a Microsoft identity platform. And it's an authentication flow that was designed for input-constrained devices, which are, for instance, imagine a television in a meeting room where you don't have a keyboard and a mouse to enter your password or to perform MFA. And so the idea is that the device displays a 9-letter code to the user on a different device, a smartphone or a laptop. The user enters this code, and this propagates the session of the first device onto the second device. The important parts are this technique can be abused for phishing. And crucially, the sign-in occurs on a Microsoft domain, which means that even implementing phishing-resistant techniques, phishing-resistant MFA methods like YubiKeys, passkeys, doesn't protect against this attack vector. It's not adversary-in-the-middle, technically, but it shares some characteristics, including the fact that the phishing server will need to interact with Microsoft APIs. And at the end of a successful attack, the attacker obtains an host token instead of a session cookie with classic AitM phishing. But the result is about the same in terms of impact. So, coming back to adversary-in-the-middle phishing, as I was saying, the phishing kits are more technically complex than just an HTML form that collects an email and a password. And that meant that not everybody was able to develop these kits, and the cybercrime ecosystem evolved, and developers that had these skills started to sell phishing kits as a service with implementing adversary-in-the-middle, often on a subscription basis, so for 2 weeks, 1 month. And quickly they started to compete with each other to add other features like anti-bot pages to protect the phishing pages from security scanners, or email attachment generators, and so on. Where do you purchase these kits? Like many other things, on Telegram. And the operators of Phishing-as-a-Service kits tend to leverage all the features of Telegram, including, of course, Telegram channels to advertise their kit and the updates, the new features, but also private groups for their users, and especially different types of Telegram bots. Commonly, they have a bot where you can purchase the kit using cryptocurrency, but that can also be the vector for customer support, sometimes for generating new phishing pages and so on. And now Quentin will present you the timeline.
Hello everyone. So at Sequoia, we have been tracking the most prominent phishing-as-a-service since 2023, when several newcomers joined the PhaaS market. And at this time, the most prominent AitM phishing kits were Caffeine, Naked Pages, and Greatness. And after that came DeadSec OTT, later rebranded as Rockstar 2FA, Storm 1167, and the most prominent one, Tycoon 2FA. And new kits appear every year until Evil Tokens in March 2026. And Evil Token is quite significant because it is the first PhaaS that offer to affiliates device code phishing pages and not only the adversary-in-the-middle phishing pages. So how this ecosystem evolved? So in 2017, Kuba Gretzky published the first open source framework implementing AitM phishing capabilities, which is named EvilJinx. And at this moment, only APT groups, pen testers, and the most advanced cybercriminals have been using these AitM phishing capabilities. But since 2022, with the apparition and emergence of many phishing-as-a-service, multiple cybercriminals started to use the AitM phishing capabilities. And we are observing the same pattern for the device code phishing. So between 2020 and 2023, the research on device code phishing was conducted by SecureWorks, and it conducts through some open source tool publication, including Squarefish and RoadTX. And during the following years, only APT and advanced cybercriminals have been using device code phishing. And now, since the emergence of evil tokens, many new cybercriminals joined the device code phishing game. And we are not only tracking the adversary-in-the-middle phishing kits, but also the TTP used by cybercriminals. And over the past few years, we observe clear trends used by the attackers. For example, in 2023, attackers started to use QR codes embedded in documents, such as PDF or DocX, to redirect the victims to their phishing links. The next year, they started to use HTML attachments embedding JavaScript to redirect the victim to their phishing links. And more recently, in 2025, attackers shift to SVG files, which are images, and by embedding some hyperlink or JavaScript code again, they can redirect the users to their AitM phishing URLs. So here are some simple examples on the slide. And attackers are not only using common TTPs for the attachments, but also for their redirection infrastructure. So most of the attackers are using open redirect URLs to redirect the users to their phishing link by injecting their link into the query file of the legitimate URL. Some of them are also using traffic distribution system, also named TDS, which aims to filter traffic based on the user properties, which are their fingerprint, their geolocation, and others. And almost all of the attackers are using anti-bot pages to protect their final phishing URL, so the fake Microsoft or Google authentication page, from scanning by a security bot. And now that we have seen the AitM phishing kits, the TTPs, and the PhaaS model, let's dig on some research and tracking methodologies that we apply to find emerging AitM phishing kits. So at Sequoia, one of our goals is to discover the new emerging phishing kits, to further analyze them, track them, and detect them. So for that, we have this approach. With the first step that consists in identifying the common delivery TTPs used by cybercriminals, as discussed previously. After that, we are writing some search heuristic based on these common delivery TTPs with the aim to hunt for new campaigns in the wild. We will deploy the search heuristic on URL or file-based or file scanning engines. And after that, we will analyze each result. The objective is to extract the final phishing URL. And in the following step, we will check if we already know the phishing domain using our CTI, or if the phishing page matches one of our signature. If we know them, it's good. If we don't know them, it is a potential candidate for a new emerging AitM phishing kit. And after that, for each phishing kit that we are following, we are writing some adversary tracking heuristic to unveil the adversary infrastructure for the redirection steps, the anti-bot pages, the phishing pages, and also the backend server. And using the result of this infrastructure, we can protect our client with the CTI, and we can also pivot from this infrastructure to delivery TTPs by analyzing their campaigns. And we can, again, continue this circle. And now let's see an example, something concrete. So as I said, in 2025, attackers shift to SVG files to deliver their phishing URLs. And at this moment, we have written some YARA rules to detect the malicious SVG files. On the screen, here is a simple YARA rules that is detecting small SVG files containing JavaScript code and some obfuscation strings. By deploying this YARA rule on a file scanning engine, we have dozens of new results every day, which are mainly true positives, so malicious attachments delivering AitM phishing kits. And by analyzing them, we know most of the phishing domains. So these are the colorful lines with the prominent Tycoon2FA phishing kits in red. And for some line, we don't know the phishing domain, neither the phishing page. And these ones are potential new kits, and we will analyze them. Grégoire will present you how do we analyze them. Here is another research methodology we apply. So these are for the QR codes, and for that we are using the sandbox execution. So for the document embedding a QR code, the sandbox are automatically opening the QR code into a Chrome browser when the QR code contains an URL. And we are trying to correlate 3 elements to find these malicious documents. So first, this is a document, either a PDF, docx, or else. The PDF results in launching a Chrome process, and this Chrome process opens a page that contacts a CAPTCHA domain names. So in this Aristotle example, the page contacts challenges.cloudflare.com, which is a domain used by the Cloudflare CAPTCHA, Cloudflare turnstile for those who know. And this method has been very effective since 2024, since we have discovered multiple new AitM phishing kits by analyzing a PDF file containing a QR code redirecting to an unknown phishing page. And here are some success stories. So first, this was Sneaky2FA. So in December 2024, we discovered the now prominent Sneaky2FA phishing kit by analyzing a PDF. We also discovered Tycoon2FA in October 2023 and Void Proxy in May 2025, and many others such as Saiga2FA, Legends2FA, or 3D cookies. So here are our research methodologies for technical analyzing. But we are also doing some research on cyber criminals communities, like we are doing for other threats like ransomware or info stealers. And for the business email compromise fraud and AitM phishing ecosystem, the cyber criminals are discussing about their services, their data, their toolkits in private groups in Telegram. And for example, in March 2026, by monitoring the Noir Legacy group, we discovered the new Phishing-as-a-Service evil tokens, so the one which is offering device code phishing. So here again, a great success stories using this approach. And as you may understand, this research approach, this methodology allows us to find new emerging kits, but also gave us great insight about the trends and the most widespread phishing kits. And by using these threat hunting results along with our telemetry or other metrics, we can find which kits are the most widespread in the wild. So here are some results in 2025. And you can see Tycoon2FA in the first line and other like Storm 1167 and so on. And now we will show you how do we analyze a new phishing kit.
So when we find a phishing URL that we don't recognize using one of the hunting methods that Quentin described, we try to collect as much information as we can on the kit to try to identify it and to track it, detect it. One of the methods we use is that we reproduce the experience of a victim entering credentials in the site inside a web browser where we record all the network traffic using, for instance, Burp Suite or the browser's network tools. And we pay close attention to all the small details, for instance, every domain contacted by during the user flow. Some phishing kits, for instance, use multiple domains. One is visible in the URL bar, but the credentials may be exfiltrated to a different domain and so on. And of course, we inspect the URL patterns, the content, the HTML content of the pages, and so on. And also, I find it's extremely useful to keep an archive of all these recordings so that sometimes, months later, you can go back and compare how a kit has evolved over time, or maybe correlate a new kit that you've discovered with an observation that you've made earlier. The second side of these initial investigations is that we use accounts for a Microsoft tenant that we control. And that means that we can inspect the sign-in logs generated by the kit. So by design, an adversary-in-the-middle phishing kit interacts with the sign-in service. And a few of the properties are very interesting. We will notice which application, intra-application ID, the phishing kit tries to authenticate to. So it will often be the landing page of Microsoft 365. We will inspect the user agents that the kit presents itself as, and also, very importantly, from which IP address the connection comes. And then another important step that we try every time is to see if we can locate a leak of the source code of the kit. So there are various ways in which the source code of a kit can get into the wild, but an example that worked well for us is to try to locate zip archives on VirusTotal, for instance, of archives that contains very specific file names or file hashes, for instance, of images, background images, or unique images used by the kit. And one example fairly recently was when we discovered Sneaky Log in December 2024. We realized that a few months earlier, an obfuscated version of the source code had been uploaded on VT. If we get the source code, we can learn much more. For instance, we can discover sometimes a second layer of backend servers that are not visible from the victim's point of view, or discover unique endpoint URLs on the phishing kit that we can use maybe to extract information or to fingerprint the servers. So moving on to detection and tracking. Often a very important aspect is that most of the Phishing-as-a-Service kits have anti-bot pages, which are usually generic CAPTCHA pages. And the goal is that security scanning tools scanning the URLs will not find a Microsoft login page, but instead a somewhat generic CAPTCHA page. Most of the main kits actually have custom anti-bot pages that we can fingerprint. And so when we discover a new kit, we look how it looks like in URL scanning services like URL Scan, paying close attention to the hashes of files, the unique file names, URLs of third-party resources, and so on, HTML page titles. And we try to find a unique heuristic to identify the anti-bot pages of the kit. And that can be one of the first steps for us to collect a large sample of pages of URLs for a single kit that we can then investigate. URL scanning sandboxes are great, but the main downside is that for a URL to be scanned, a user needs to have reported it. So we try to go to the next step and to identify the domain proactively. For this, we use, including other things, internet-wide scanning services like Census. And so for each of the part of the infrastructure that we have identified, the anti-bot page, the backend servers, and so on, we try to identify a unique signature on census based on open ports and HTTP responses and so on, to collect the new IP addresses of the kit. And sometimes a pure static signature is not enough. So we add an active testing step where we will triage the result from the initial heuristic by pinging a unique URL and checking the response. A more generic detection idea that applies to a lot of hunting sources is to try to look for unique string tokens in domain names or in URLs. And it works surprisingly often. Two examples of domain names that were pretty recognizable are Void Proxy, which was a popular kit for most of last year, which had very characteristic subdomain prefixes for its Microsoft and Google landing pages. And Evil Proxy, which was one of the major kits of the first few years of Phishing-as-a-Service, also had very unique subdomains inspired by real Microsoft ones, but with numbers substituted. Of course, patterns don't apply only to domain names, but also to URL paths. And I want to point out an interesting technique, especially for phishing kits that act like a clean reverse proxy, like Evil Jinx variants. They tend to mirror every URL from the legitimate service onto the malicious domain. And the downside of doing that is that the login flows, for instance, of Microsoft and Google, sometimes have very, very distinctive URL paths or file names. And you can be pretty sure that if you find this exact URL on a domain that is not a Microsoft or a Google domain, it's a phishing page. Finally, I was talking earlier of looking at the sign-in logs. We try to find detection heuristics in these logs. So as I said earlier, by design, the Adversary-in-the-Middle phishing server interacts with the signing service. And so at the very least, the IP address from which the sign-in comes will be different. It will be the IP of the phishing server or an IP address controlled by the attacker, and not the IP address of the user, the victim. Also, surprisingly often, these kits use weird user agent values. It can be non-browser user agents, like Axios, which is an HTTP client for Node.js. Malformed browser user agents, they forgot to add a part in the string, I don't know. Very outdated user agents and so on. On the IP address side, you can often find anomalies either of the country of origin or of the type of IP space. Usually, legitimate users will connect from residential internet service providers, ASNs, but phishing kits are usually coming from hosting providers, IPs. And finally, it's a bit more advanced technique, but especially in the case of Microsoft logs, a single authentication flow of a user is represented by a series of events corresponding, for instance, to the various steps of the MFA authentication. And some phishing kits introduce inconsistencies in these successive steps, where, for instance, the user appears to switch web browsers in middle of a logging or something like that, which is a good detection.
And now the last part. So this section is the profiling of a cyber criminal we name James Wilson. And everything we talked just before comes to these investigations. Sorry. And this investigation started by searching a void proxy administration panel domain on Flare while we were investigating the void proxy phishing as a service. So for those who don't know Flare, Flare is an application that aggregates data from cybercrime forums, Telegram, data leaks, and also infostealer logs. And so what you see on this screen is an infostealer log, so the data related to an authentication URL for the void proxy domain name. And so an infostealer log is the data harvested by the infostealer malware and exfiltrated to the attacker server, as we've seen with the previous presentations. And for these infostealer logs, the victim was on YouTube and has been redirected to a Dropbox download URL. And he downloaded Photoshop 2025, the RAR archive. And by executing the content of this archive, he just infected itself with Radamantis stealer. So what about this system? So the system is a Windows 11 system named Wilso and located in Nigeria. And among the credentials found in the infostealer log, we found a lot of instances of Microsoft sign-in page for different username. So we investigate them, and the username was related to corporate account in multiple organizations worldwide. So at this moment, we understood that this infostealer log was the one of an attacker conducting AitM phishing operations, and this attacker tried to sign in on the Microsoft web page using the compromised account. So we analyzed further this log, and we found some interesting data about phishing kits. So in the victim of the infostealer, so in the attacker's browser data for the history, we found 4 authentication URLs for phishing-as-a-service platforms. So for Void Proxy, it was the start of our investigation. For Tycoon 2FA, for the cybercrime marketplace XLeet, and for the Stroke Phishing-as-a-Service. And in the attacker's cookies data, we also found that the attacker browsed some phishing domains that are known from Sequoia CTI. So we found domains for the Void Proxy PhaaS, for Tycoon 2FA, but also for Naked Pages and the Evil Jinx open source framework. So at this moment, we know that we have an infostealer log that corresponds to an attacker system, and this attacker is an affiliate of at least 4 phishing-as-a-service. And he is also using the Evil Jinx framework. So let's continue to dig. Who is this attacker? And by searching in the browser data, we still dig this data. We found some domain names related to food with dominus.ng, with e-commerce, with Amazon and Jumia. The attacker has also an account in the Union Bank of Nigeria, and is likely using the Nigeria airline Airpeace. And the attacker used also coding platforms such as Code Academy and Exercism. And we found that the attacker used the same Gmail address for all these personal life services, which is Maxell.o. But for, so is it the real identity? Maybe. And for the phishing operation, he is using another Gmail address, which is James Wilson. And he is using this same Gmail address for registering to phishing-as-a-service platforms, for services for domain registration like GoDaddy or Namecheap, but also for email, phone, VPN, proxy, and web services. And interestingly, for these services, he is using both legitimate and shady services. For the legitimate services, we can mention Cloudflare, Brevo, Debounce, and so on. And for the shady services, we can mention RDP Monster, Red VDS, and others. And of course, this guy is a cyber criminal, so he is using some cryptocurrency. And we found in the history data that he is using cryptocurrency platforms for buying some goods in crypto or exchanging money. So this investigation was a great insight into the typical profile of a cyber criminal conducting AitM phishing operations. So one threat actor can be an affiliate of several PhaaS platforms. His operation rely on both shady and legitimate services. And this is interesting that he is not only operating AitM phishing campaigns, but he is also likely operating business email compromise fraud, because we found some download tools related to deepfakes and related to anti-detect browser. So these are common TTPs when you want to do some BEC fraud. And we also found the download of post-compromise tools such as UltraViewer, and AnyDesk. And finally, this attacker has an opportunistic victimology, since we found compromised accounts related to organization in different verticals, different sectors, and worldwide. And to conclude our talk, some key points. So the AitM phishing ecosystem is well established and highly structured, as we try to present you with the PhaaS model. To better research, analyze, track, and detect the AitM phishing threats, we need to have a deep understanding of this ecosystem. We talk a lot about adversary-in-the-middle phishing, but now that Evit token bring the device code phishing as a service, it may accelerate the ecosystem's evolution. And the AitM ecosystem may evolve in the next month with new vibe-coded kits, which will appear in the PhaaS market. So for the past years, we observed that 5 to 10 kits were mainly adopted by cyber criminals. But now it is quite easy to write AitM phishing kits using AI. So maybe we will have additional phishing kits entering the market. If you are interested by this topic, we are publishing some of our reports on the Sequoia public blog, so blog.sequoia.io. And I think we have enough time for some questions, so if you have any question, please ask. And thank you, Bourgue, for offering us the opportunity to present our work to this audience. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready for your questions.
Hello, really interesting talk, thank you. You mentioned when you were looking at the kits that you saw the Microsoft Entra ID a lot, but I'm just curious to see what other organizations were impersonated here as well.
So Microsoft is really the majority. Some of the major kits also support Google Workspace. It's clearly the second most targeted platform.
Les boîtes derrière Microsoft.
Yeah.
Les entreprises clientes de Microsoft.
Ah, sorry. I was thinking lower in the list or? Yeah.
Les clients de Microsoft qui sont compromis.
I mean
the companies using Microsoft and Entra ID.
Sorry, I'm not sure then what to answer about that. I mean.
Les boîtes,
yeah.
Les boîtes dont les comptes sont compromis.
Ouais. C'est quoi la question?
Si vous avez vu les boîtes dont les comptes sont compromis.
La question c'était bien, il y avait Google, il y en avait d'autres.
Oui, yes. So yeah, after Microsoft and Google, much less so, but some hosting providers typically. GoDaddy, Okta is also sometimes targeted because it's used in conjunction with Microsoft. But it's really mostly these two.
Thank you.
So, other questions?
I got a question. May I?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen on your various total year for your hunting that you were hunting for SVG files, but it was HTML calls to SVG you were hunting for. So are they real SVG attachment, or is it HTML with SVG tags in it?
Yeah, these are real SVG files, but you can put some JavaScript files into the SVG. So this is the technique used by the attackers. They just put no image into the SVG files and put only JavaScript code with the aim to redirect the user into their phishing pages.
Thank you.
No question up there. Balcony. Okay, 1, 2.